Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Big View, Ending Poverty in Your Community. At Circles, our mission is building community to end poverty through intentional friendships, personal transformation, and systemic change, led by the people closest to the challenge. And our vision for the future is all individuals live in equitable and thriving communities where poverty no longer exists.
Hey y'all, this is Kris Alexander, and I am the Chief Learning Officer at Circles USA. And as usual, I am joined with my co host, Executive Director Kamatara Johnson. Hello, Kamatara.
Hello,
Welcome.
everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
Yes, and I am super excited about today. So this is episode 2 of season 2, and you may recall from last episode that we are moving through the mindset, the circles mindset that we bring to Big View. And Big View is the work that we do on systems change to end poverty in our communities, like nationally, but also in our local communities. And so today in season 2, we're starting a 3-part conversation on centering people and purpose. And we have 3 different mindsets that we're going to approach over the next 3 episodes on how to do that effectively, how to ensure that we keep our purpose at the forefront of what we're doing, and also the people, the community, the people that are closest to the challenge at the center of what we're doing. And today we are beginning this conversation with values-based organizing. And this is something that I discovered in my research as I created the Big View training that Circles USA now has. And when I found it, I was so excited because I was like, this is it. This is what CUSA does. And so I'm going to just really quickly share very quickly what values-based organizing is and kind of what traditional organizing is that we kind of typically see. So, traditional organizing is that you look out into the world or you look around in your community, you see there is a problem, you focus on finding a solution to that problem, and then the strategy is you implement it. So, in this example here, the problem is that not all children, we're looking at a school, not all children have breakfast at home. Not all children have time to eat breakfast at home before they come to school. So the solution is that the school provides breakfast for children. And the strategy is cafeteria makes breakfast and the children can purchase it. So it solves the problem, but it also leaves a lot of kids out, like maybe kids that don't have the money to eat breakfast, or maybe they get to school, right as the bell rings and they don't have time, or whatever it may be. So, in values based organizing, instead of looking at what the problem is and then finding a solution at it or for it, instead, we look at what is the value that we all hold, what is going against that value, what do we want, and then what can we do to get there. So, in the same example, all children, the value is that all children deserve equal educational opportunities, regardless of their socioeconomic status, regardless of disability or ability, ethnicity, gender, genetic informational or national origin, race, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, expression, the whole gamut. All children deserve equal opportunity to education. The violation is that children who don't eat breakfast or who don't have access to breakfast aren't able to learn at the same pace as their peers because they're hungry. And we know that hunger is a barrier to learning. And so the aspiration is that we prioritize the education of every student and therefore ensure that they all get to eat breakfast. And the campaign is free breakfast for all. And we know that this free breakfast for all is something um, that is implemented all across our country, right? And that way, every child has access to food, period. And it doesn't matter what the barriers are that may come up, they're just given food, right? Because the value is that every child deserves education. So that's essentially what values-based organizing is. Instead of looking at the problem, like one singular problem, and finding a solution and doing that over and over and over again, we start from the big picture value of what do we want our community to look like? Like, what are the values that we hold in our community? What's keeping us from getting there? And then what do we do about it? So, thank you for humoring me, Kamatara, as I just kind of run through that whole little thing. And my question, first of all, I want to hear if you have just anything to say on that, because I'm sure you do. But I also want to hear from you just values. Why are values so important? So, kind of going to that bigger picture and just anything else you want to say, of course.
I really appreciate you, reminding us doing the refresher course on values-based organizing. And for those of you who may be listening to the podcast, not seeing the video, if you want to go check this podcast out online on the website, then you can see there were just a couple slides that had some really nice visuals that help you to picture what Kris was describing. So I love the visuals, but also that is a really good example. Like, we all can relate to that example, especially myself as a former school teacher in a Title I school. It was incredibly important, whether it was the school year or even in the summer, when breakfast and lunch were being handed out in the parks. That was a solution, a strategy that they came up with. Like, okay, now we don't have school. How do we still get food to our precious children who may be suffering from malnutrition, because the parents are depending on the schools to help feed their children and to be healthy and happy and all wonderful things. So that was a great example. And values are so incredibly important, because when we know what we value, it really directs our actions in a meaningful way. And Circles USA is all about being assets driven, life affirming, community solutions. Like, how do we all come together to help each other out to live better lives? Those are part of our values. And then that gives us our yardstick, our measurement, our go, no go. Like, should we do this? Should we not do this? Or to be able to ask some of those bigger questions that might be hard. Like, for whom does this solve the problem? If we're doing the problem solving approach, there's a lot of folks that get excluded, not only from the solution, but from the process of creating the solution. It's a very top-down approach. It's prescriptive. It only meets like a really targeted niche group where only these few people get their needs met. And then it may make, let's say, that the families who don't have the capacity to feed the children makes them a problem, as opposed to our community has resources. We have this beautiful school where the children are all going. We could figure this out. How do we make it so all the children get to have breakfast? Because we value the education and the health and well-being of all of our children. There's our value. And we also don't want only some people to get breakfast. How would you figure it out? Well, these kids get breakfast, but not those. So having, like a values-based organizing just seems so much more inclusive, community-driven, assets-based, life-affirming. How do we work on this together to get the best ideas possible? And then you get the community building, you get the buy-in, you get all the partnerships that might come out of it that wouldn't happen otherwise if it was prescriptive, top-down, siloed, and some of the things that we're trying to get away from. It's not so transactional. How do you get to the transformational? And that's why having values at the heart of what we're doing, like, that's where the transformation happens. When you get to live your values, it's so fulfilling.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. You touched on so many things that I want to go back to. Um, and I think the first thing, just kind of going back to that, what you were talking about, like the importance of values and how we can come together under those sort of shared values. And I think the other thing that always comes to my mind when I think about values is that we're all living from our values. We might just not be aware of what those values are, right? And so, I really appreciate values work on all levels. I do my own individual values work so that when I'm looking at decisions in my life, I can I can look at how those decisions are going to align or not with the values that I know are important to me. And I have to like actually weed through and look at, I think often we have these sort of aspirational values of we want this to be a value. And that's great. It's absolutely wonderful to have aspirational values, but it's also really important to know the values that we actually have, right? So, an example would be looking at this job career, really opportunity for myself, shifting from being like a contract worker to being brought on as the chief learning officer. I got to look at that opportunity through the lens of my values and see if it was in alignment, and look at circles and say, is circles in alignment? Am I in alignment with them? Right. And do all this work. And then ultimately I'm like, yes, absolutely. Right. And so we get to do that on an organizational level as well. We get to recognize what are our values as circles or as whatever organization you're a part of? Like, what is important to us? And then when we're making these decisions, we run those through the lens of our values.
And what I love about that too is inside the realm of each value we hold, there are infinite, actions we could take or ways we could roll. So it almost feels more generative or more creative. And we may have people that differ in their opinions or differ in how they think we should get there. But if we agree on the value and use that as our North Star, then whatever solution we can come up with, it's going to be fine. Like, I'm much more open to negotiating or coming to ideas that maybe I didn't even have if I can understand the value that's underneath or behind it. Like, oh, that still maintains a person's dignity and their capacity to work, but how about they only work one job, not three?
Yeah.
Okay, that would maintain the person's, dignity and health and well-being and contributing to society. Like, it pulls it all together. So focusing on values, it's like we can find that common ground that comes up with the solutions and strategies that really could work, that could bring people together.
Well, and I think that that's kind of the next thing I wanted to pull out of what you said a minute ago is just the communal nature
Mhm.
of being values oriented. And we can see also communities have a set of values, whether they're spoken or unspoken. Countries have a set of unspoken, sometimes spoken, often unspoken values or not in alignment with each other. I think we're seeing that in the United States right now, where we're all trying to figure out that what values we're holding that we can all hold together as a country, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, it becomes this communal exercise. And I love your example and kind of want to like dive into it a little more of like a value we hold is people's dignity and ability to thrive, right?
Mhm.
Like I would say that most everybody, close to everybody, most people can get behind the idea that everybody should have opportunities to thrive,
Right.
right? And so dignity is the value. The other thing you can do is you don't have to have one solution
Mhm.
or like one strategy. We can have this overarching value. There's going to be a lot of places maybe that are violations to that, where that's a barrier, and lots of different people who have lots of different ideas about how to get there all get to work together and implement all or some or more than one of the hows to work toward this shared value. And it's not like one group helping another group. It's a community coming together to
Right.
make the community the best that it can be.
And that's that common cause. So, regardless of maybe personal difference or difference in our backgrounds, our education, our socioeconomic status, or like we're in different parts of this neighborhood, or we have totally different lived experiences. But, let's say that we really value human relationships.
Mhm.
Okay, then we can come together and say, how can we make these relationships better? Or we really value thriving communities. Okay, so I have a more open heart, a more open mind, like I'm more willing to do the work. And then there's more people who can do the work together because we're being inclusive and yeah, finding that common purpose, the common ground, like how do we really center people? And I think we're inherently values driven. It just seemed to me that seems like human nature. Like what is
Yeah.
meaningful to us is motivational. It's what gives us hope. So if we can keep people connected with their motivation, their hope, their purpose, like why are we doing this? And it does matter how you get there. So it's like could we be values driven the whole way, not just the ends justify the means, but no, like as we're walking this path together, sharing the journey, could we be values driven the whole way and bringing people together and like weaving community assets and wonderful things along, even though we might disagree on some things, but we could really come together around a common purpose.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much, and I think, the ends never justify the means if it means you have to live outside of values, right? So
Yes.
I love that like reminder of this isn't something we do at the end of the process. Like, oh, is this in alignment with our values now that we've done all this work? No, it's the first thing. The first thing we do is we get really clear on what our values are. And then we look at what is standing in the way of those values and then come together on the how. And I was just sitting here thinking as you're talking, of course, like the big value that Circles USA and probably people who are listening to this have is ending poverty in our communities, right? And there are so many organizations, so many people doing that in so many different ways. And one of the things that I love about Circles and about working with you specifically, Kamatara, is the partnerships. Like we are always looking to partner with other people to learn what we don't know, right? Like we're in this poverty arena, but we don't have the corner market on the best way to solve poverty. We have because none of us have
Mhm.
the answer. There is no the answer to
Right.
solve poverty, right? But we all together are working to end poverty. And we're all doing it in our different ways. And we may or may not necessarily agree on every how. But at the end of the day, we can all say, yeah, you know what? We all agree that nobody should have to live in poverty.
Yes.
Like that poverty needs to end.
We agree on the why, and then we don't. Sometimes people get so trapped in the how that no action happens. Everything
Yes.
just gets paralyzed or locked up. And we're trying to actually build communities to get past that gridlock or get past the silos that are doing things that don't communicate with each other. Whereas we can say to churches, schools, government agencies, not local nonprofits, like all across the sectors, hey, would you like to have thriving families and thriving communities? Yes. Oh my
Of
gosh.
course.
And people who can be working to be working, and people who can be contributing to the community contributing, and healthy happy children, like we're all going to say yes. So it's like if we can focus on our values and then we each can discern, okay, we're working on this value, but this piece is what's mine to do. What's mine to do inside of this value? And then you can do these things and I'll do this and those folks will do that. And then we can all come together more. It's that, cross-sector collaboration or collective impact approach, or even just to say like across the community approach. It's very holistic, not just for the person. Yes, we're considering the whole person and the whole family. We're also considering the whole community.
And it's all of it, because you talked about all these sectors, and I just also want to throw out there, like, even businesses,
Yes.
even for-profit organizations can get behind thriving families, thriving community, because that is a
Thriving
thriving business.
employees. Yeah.
Right? Like, it's so communal, it's so holistic in its approach. And also, I just want to also point out what you said about, like, the squabble, like getting stuck in the how and squabbling and never taking action. I think I think that's something that has happened in the past, and I hear a lot of people when I'm talking to them get really frustrated at the, like, inaction
Right.
of just not being able to, like, identify a problem and a solution together. And so this circumvents that whole issue, right? We don't have to, yeah, we don't have to agree on what the problem or the solution is, because we all agree on what the value is. We all agree that thriving is the goal, right? I love that. So, um, what are some other examples that you have, or where you've seen this sort of values-based organizing really, like, shift or really move a community or a group forward in an impactful way?
Well, I think it does outpicture at the chapter level when folks are doing their big view campaigns, like listening to circle leaders who are our participants in the circles program, the people with the lived experience of poverty. Okay, what are you experiencing? So listening is a core value, and
Mm.
valuing all people's experiences, that's a core value. So like from the word go, we're valuing what people are saying. And then as folks share, for example, in um, Greenville, South Carolina, like folks were struggling to get to work. There were transportation issues. So like, okay, how do we come together and solve that? Like, okay, let's think of this outside of the box. Like, we're going to go through what's the violation? Okay, we don't have a transportation system that meets all people's needs. This bus system is not getting us where we need to go. I'm waiting for the bus. It passes me. There's no bus. It takes 3 hours, or I've got to drop the kids off at childcare and then get to work. It's not real for a lived experience. It doesn't work. But because we have the value of the dignity of all people, and to have health and well-being, that you can work but in a balanced life with good supports, and that you're not just getting raked across the coals to work no matter what. All of that is so hard. So they came up with the van pool idea, like, let's get people clustered together, and how do we get them to carpool and get to work, and like solve that transportation issue that's so, like, it's such a pressure cooker if you don't have transportation. And so again, it gets back to the value of each person, and just with like that touch of community support, then people could really plug into work, and the dignity that provides, and the obviously the finances and economy that provide, like all the benefits that come with, okay, now I can take care of my children and I can work and I can have work-life balance because I'm not freaking out about this transportation issue. So there's just so many times where our chapters have listened to people's lived experience and come together as a community. Like, we value thriving families and individuals. So how do we get there? Like, what are the barriers that are in the way? And then what are all different solutions? Great. Now let's work with some partners in the community to solve that.
Well, and that what is mine to do question, whether you're asking that individually as an organization, as a community, that like I don't have to do it all,
Mm-hmm.
and I can do something. So what is mine to do? And trusting that like my piece of the solution, or my not solution, but my piece of the campaign and the aspiration, I do my piece toward this value, and this organization or person does their piece, and this person or organization does their piece, and we're all uplifted together, right? And it just keeps circling back around to that. It's not you have a problem and I don't, and I'm going to solve your problem for you. But we as a community are building a community that we all want to live in and be a part of. And how are we doing that together?
It
Um,
really puts the heart back in the community too. Like, well, you've got a problem. That's your problem. As opposed to no, we are all connected. Like we are very interdependent. So if you have a problem, it impacts me too in ways I may not even realize. But if we love our community and we love our neighbors and we value, like we've been saying, dignity or wellness or work life balance or a deep sense of meaning and belonging, okay, then we need to work on this together. So it not only builds it out, like we get the space to practice those values, and then it builds up our muscles, and then we're weaving it into our community. So now our community is stronger and richer all the way around because we're living our values, not just saying them.
mhm. Well, and going back just to your Vanpool example, which is a fabulous example, shout out to the Greenville Circle, or the Upstate South Carolina Circles chapter. Circles of Upstate South Carolina, my goodness.
Beautiful.
Um, but it's like, yeah, we could look at it as like, oh, you don't have a way to get to work and drop your kids off. That's a you problem. This
Mhm.
is a, I don't
Take
have
the
that problem.
bus or
Yeah, take
whatever.
the bus
Take
and
an
do this,
Uber.
yeah, work it out. But it's like when you're looking at it from that holistic, interdependent part, like it is important to business owners that people have transportation, because they're missing out on incredible workers
Yes.
just because the workers can't get to work. And people are missing out on, having like childcare centers
Mhm.
don't get to have the children, and the children don't get to have that experience of community with other kids. And it just ripples out. There's not a that's a you problem versus me problem. That's a,
We
you know we want a community that thrives, and so we're all going to come together to make that happen for one another.
when people get a little too into the how, I think that's where people can become so entrenched and we start, getting upset about the color of the cocktail napkins instead of how much we love our community members. And so it's like, are we getting, I understand there has to be an action plan and there has to be steps and we do have to agree on those. But once we get our values set, then everything falls into place. Like if I'm so steeped in conditions that I'm like losing my mind and I don't know what to do, then I might be asking the wrong questions. They're
Yes.
like, what do we do next? It's like, wait, why are we doing this?
It gets us all like in the same book, like in the same chapter of the same book, instead of we're all focused on the cocktail napkins and we don't look up long enough to realize that we're not even in the same book, or like
Yeah,
planning for the same party, if we're going to go with
right.
the cocktail napkin
Yes.
analogy, right? Um, and this really circles us around very nicely to how does this values centered organizing, like why is this one of our mindsets
Mhm.
in centering people and purpose? And I think we've said it all kinds of different ways, but I just want us to like highlight it, right? Like to say it out loud, of the importance of ensuring once again that it's the whole community. We're centering people and purpose because we're centering the community, and that is the people and purpose. Like at the heart of it, the purpose is thriving communities, right? The purpose is aspirate. I'm not going to say it as eloquently. Actually, I'm just going to let you say it. What is the purpose? Why are we doing all of this, Kamatara?
Well, it gets us back to our tagline, which is building community to end poverty. We really do believe in the goodness of people and the goodness of communities and how our neighbors can take care of each other and that we can do wonderful things when we work together. So the wonderful thing is when we remember who and what we are and what we value, then some of that, some of the more traditional things that we've experienced in the past that really aren't working. We've got this, crazy system that doesn't work, and we've got some really divisive politics going on, and we've got some really, like, it is that gridlock that just something that should be working but isn't, because we can't even get to the conversation we need to have. So
Yeah.
when we focus on values, we can open up people's hearts, open up people's minds, open up people's hands, and that brings us together to really move things forward. We all want the same things when it comes, truly. We do. Some really basic common core ideals that we all want. So when we focus on that, it moves us forward.
Yeah. My mind just immediately went back to like a farmer's market, like the tailgate market that my spouse and I go to every weekend, right? Like when we get in there, we're not focused on like, what are your politics or,
What church do you go
what
to?
church do you go
What
to? Or
neighborhood are you in? Yeah.
yeah, where do you live? Or what do you think about, poverty in our community? Like we're not focused on any of that. We're focused on coming together around our community
Yeah.
and giving and receiving together, like in this
Right.
communal
And
experience. And so,
supporting local businesses and
right.
supporting each other as a community. And then also, what I love about local farmers markets is also getting to know your neighbors and having beautiful conversations and moving at the speed of relationships, like really listening to people, really seeing each other. And again, it's so values driven, as opposed to, I'm going to go to the cheapest grocery store and I'm going to get, the most for the least. And I understand, like, sometimes that could be really important, economically. Like, it's a privilege to be able to shop at the farmers market. I understand that. But when I can, and then I have the relationships, and there's the business of it, and then there's the beautiful product of it, and yeah, like, it's so mutually reinforcing, and it's so values driven. That's a great example.
Well, and what I love, yes, absolutely. And there are times that I'm like, cheapest, fastest grocery store, like both of those things simultaneously. And what I love, is that people like a value is that everybody should be able to have access to
Mhm.
that if that is what they choose. And so, like, I know a lot of communities, like, I know when I lived in Napa, California, the
Mhm.
farmers market had you got double food stamp.
Yes, Las Cruces has that too in New Mexico with the tokens. It's
Yeah, with the
wonderful.
tokens. And so it's
Yes.
like, here's what's really cool is like the value of community is then like, okay, so we have this strategy of tailgate markets. We're doing that. Oh no, people are still being left out. So what's this new barrier? How can we fix this new barrier? Right?
Mhm.
Like it's just this ever building,
Right.
expanding process.
'Cause it holds on to the value that everyone deserves nutritional, fresh foods, or, we value knowing our neighbors and getting to know each other's names and each other's
Yeah.
stories. And yeah, that's wonderful.
And it's the both ands, it's the both and of it all. There's not one right way of being. We're not saying like if you don't shop at the tailgate market or the farmers market
No.
XYZ, right? It's just it's just another way for us to be together in community, and we each get to find our own way to be in community together and to value that.
Mhm.
So any final words?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I want to challenge all the listeners and viewers to maybe take some time to think about what you value. What are
Mm,
your core values? Like, could you come up with your top 5 gotta habits and then look at your schedule? Does your schedule for the week reflect those values, or are you doing something else? Because if let's say your top 5 values is actually reflected in your schedule that you already have, there's a really high probability you will feel very fulfilled in your life. If they
yeah.
don't match, like I've got these values, but my schedule is doing these other things, there's a pretty good chance you're not going to be feeling satisfied with your life, or you may feel like you are not thriving. So that's just a little values challenge for the folks listening today to check that out. And it might be very telling, or like where you're working. Do your
Mm,
values align with that workplace? Because again, when you're in alignment, then it's very fulfilling and you have a deep sense of meaning and belonging and purpose. When it doesn't match, that's when life gets really, really hard.
yeah. And recognizing, the privilege of being able to change jobs and things like that. So if you're working somewhere and you're like, you know what, it's not in alignment with my values, and
Mm-hmm.
uh it's not in my possibilities right now to move jobs or to alter that in some way, then maybe try, like,
Mm-hmm.
here are my values. Where are some spots,
Yes.
and how could I just, like, infuse my values into what I'm already doing? So it's no matter what, there's how can you get more of your values into what you're doing? Noticing, taking stock, and then not judging yourself for it, and just finding little quick ways that you can infuse those values.
Yes, you can bring it. You can lead from wherever you are.
Yeah, exactly. We can't get to anywhere without starting where we are. It's like one of my little things, right? You can't get from A to B by starting at C because you're not there.
Yeah. But and that brings us right back to values. You got to start at your home base.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Kamatara. I It's always such a rich conversation, and we're going to be continuing this conversation in our next episode, which will come out next month, and it's going to be the second part of centering people and purpose. And I hope you will join us for that. Bye, y'all.
Thanks so much, Kris.